There's a lot to consider when it comes to purchasing a new Xbox Series X in 2025. And in this video, I'm going to go over what makes the Series X worth purchasing, but some really large considerations that you should make to make sure that it's the right fit for you, but also something that you're going to benefit from. And with that also being said, I'm also going to go over some of the deficiencies or things that it's lacking and to be aware of before you decide to ultimately purchase one of the different lines of Xbox Series X that are available currently on the market. So let's take a look. So the very first thing to consider when looking at purchasing an Xbox Series X in 2025 is what type of model are you going to get? Are you going to look at getting the digital only model that has only just recently been available on the market? Or are you going to consider getting a disc-based Xbox Series X? Now, the reason I bring this up is if you're someone who has an existing game library, you have a large gaming library from Microsoft or from the previous Xboxes, this is something that going with a digital only route, you don't have any option to get an external disk drive or essentially get any sort of ability to run those games. Now, if you bought games in the past on your Xbox One or on your 360 and they were digital, those for the most part will run on your Series X if it's digital only. But if you have a game library or a large enough backwards compatible game library, it is a huge consideration to look at getting either a digital only version of this console or a disc-based version of this console. Now, one thing I will highlight, however, is the disc-based version of this console, unless you're going to the 2 terabyte model, you can most likely find a 1 terabyte model with a disk drive, probably for a pretty good price used secondhand, and you'll in some cases probably even get it cheaper than the digital only model if you're okay with buying it used. So that is a consideration, because my opinion is if you have any interest in running disc-based games or backwards compatible games that you can only get on disc, which there's still a significant amount when it comes to 360, for example, I would recommend looking at that disc-based version. Now, moving into the actual console itself and kind of highlighting some of the best features of it. I have the Series S, I also have the disc-based Series X, and one of the biggest things to consider out of the gate is, are you using this for 4K or not? Now, if you're not intending on purchasing your Xbox console with the intention of using 4K or any possibility of using 4K in the near future, my opinion is that you probably should skip the Series X entirely, save a bunch of money, and get the Series S. And if you look on this channel, I have multiple videos on why I think the Series S is great for the average non-4K gamer. But if you are looking at getting this to be able to play Xbox-based or Xbox Game Pass-based games on a console the best possible way, then I would consider going for the Series X for that reason, because this console does do an admirable job on most of the AAA titles, either upscaling to a crisp 4K-esque look or playing some games natively in 4K entirely. And I do notice the difference, especially with my gaming monitor. I can definitely tell the difference between a full 4K game and a game that's not in full 4K. But again, this is dependent on, or considering the Series X, in my opinion, should be dependent on, are you seriously going to be taking advantage of 4K? And if the answer is yes, this Series X is definitely for you. If the answer is no, then I would heavily recommend saving a bunch of money and looking at getting the very affordable Xbox Series S. Now, moving beyond that, one of the biggest advantages to any of the Xbox systems that you purchase, whether it's the Series S models, whether it's the digital only Xbox Series X, whether it's the disk drive based Xbox Series X, is being able to seamlessly use Game Pass. Now, Game Pass, for those of you who don't know, it's basically like Netflix for games. You pay a subscription service. Here in Canada, I believe I spend about $25 for the highest tier package. And essentially, you have access to a ton of different games. But the coolest thing is, any game that's from a Microsoft owned party, which now companies who make Call of Duty, for example, Activision and those guys are now owned by Microsoft. Those games will be on Game Pass essentially forever and will be available immediately once they release. So one of the biggest things last year was being able to get Black Ops 6 day one, and I'm a guy who every single year I purchase the new Call of Duties. I was pretty happy that I didn't have to do that last year because this was available pretty much immediately once it hit. So one of the coolest features that you could take advantage of on the Xbox Series console is getting Game Pass. Now, if that doesn't appeal to you, that is, in my opinion, probably one of the biggest considerations, more so than even playing your backlog of physical games, and even more so than if you're using it in 4K or not, is are you going to benefit from Game Pass? Because Game Pass, in my opinion, is at this junction what really makes the Xbox Series consoles special. And if you want the best way to play them, the Series X, on a console anyways, the Series X, in my opinion, is the best way to possibly play them with the best graphics and everything else. However, if you're looking at just getting this for a couple games and you're on the fence between PlayStation or Xbox, you may want to reconsider what games you're going to be playing, because a lot of the games on the Series X or the Series consoles generally, and on Game Pass even at this point, are on devices like gaming PCs or PlayStation. So my opinion is, if you're looking at this as a device to maximize your Game Pass experience, then the Series X is the best possible way to do that, and it's worth paying that premium to be able to do that. Now, moving further, one of the things that, if you've never really played on Xbox or ever really gotten into the Xbox ecosystem pretty seriously, one of the biggest things I do want to highlight, though, that I love about the Series consoles, whether you're getting the Series S or X, is the controller. And my opinion is, I like the way the controller feels, like the stock standard controller. I like the way the joysticks feel, the dead zones feel, for pretty much since the 360 era, have felt tight and felt good. I like the ergonomics of the controller, the placement of the buttons, the way they feel. And as far as I'm concerned, that is a big deciding factor for me. And so if you're coming from, an old gaming PC and you use an Xbox controller, my opinion is you probably are going to love the Xbox even more, because you have such a great controller to use on this console. Now, one of the biggest deficits, however, with the stock packing controller is it's not rechargeable. Now, it's pretty cheap to get a set of rechargeable batteries or a rechargeable battery pack, but that is a consideration, right? One of the advantages to the Sony-based consoles or even the Nintendo console is that these are all rechargeable devices. The Microsoft-based consoles, for whatever reason, have not adopted that approach yet. The only way you're going to get a rechargeable Microsoft controller is if you go to their premium level Elite Series 2 controller, which does have a built-in rechargeable battery pack. But again, that's not included with any of these Xbox Series X packages. So that is a consideration. But if you like the ergonomics of the Xbox controller and you've used that on previous devices, there's more to love here. There's also been a lot of latency issues that have been fixed on this new generation of Xbox-based controllers with the Xbox Series console. And at first I thought that might have just been a bit of a buzz, or there was something that was not quite true about that. I have tested previous Xbox One controllers that I have on my Series X, and using the new generation of Xbox Series controllers, that latency, there's definitely a noticeable difference in terms of the input time. It's not like we're talking some sort of gargantuan difference, but it's a big enough difference that it does really make, in my opinion, one of the best gaming controllers even better on this new generation of Xbox consoles. Now, one thing I do want to highlight, however, and I'll be completely transparent, I'm not certain that the PlayStation does or doesn't have this feature, but this is something that I was actually quite frustrated with when I bought my Series X, and it doesn't appear that Microsoft has done anything to change this, but it actually comes down to sound. And what I mean by that is, I have a nice gaming soundbar that I've used for years. I used it on my old PS4, I used it on my One X, and that was ran using an optical cable. The Xbox Series X to this day, even with the newer generation models, does not have the ability to accept an optical audio cable. Now, I'm aware that some modern TVs will allow the HDMI to run pass-through through the optical cables. The problem is I've tried this on a couple different TVs, including my gaming monitor, and I still seem to have a very large delay between what's happening on my soundbar and what's happening in the game. And this seems to be a common issue that I still see being talked about on Reddit posts and Microsoft support posts that has not been officially remedied by Microsoft. And as I understand, this lack of optical output cable is something that it was omitted due to cost, essentially, for each of these units. Now, the reason I'm highlighting this, and this may seem like I'm overstating something, but it's not uncommon that with modern gaming consoles, people are purchasing these now to replace that with their old home entertainment, ultra Blu-ray players and those sorts of things. And if you've invested a significant amount of money in good sound equipment or a good sound system, then you may be in a position where you might be having a lesser experience trying to run this through your Series X, because as I understand, the Series X will play ultra Blu-ray movies, but if you have a really nice high-end sound system, you may have difficulties in that movie properly playing on your, or the sound of it properly playing through your Xbox console. So that is one of the things that, in my opinion, is a significant enough deficit when considering purchasing the Series X in 2025, because I have buddies and people that I work with who have now since adopted the Series X purely because they found it for a very good price. But if that's your reason for purchasing it with hopes that you're going to essentially say goodbye to your ultra Blu-ray player and the way that's set up, the sound may be a significant consideration. Now, I myself have pretty much just dropped the soundbar. I use the official wireless Xbox headset, which works incredibly well. But for those of you who are sitting in a nice home entertainment area, you may find that this is one of the things that is lacking on the Series X. And it's unfortunate because I was a guy who enjoyed using my nice subwoofer and soundbar with all my previous generation consoles, and this is completely absent from this line of Xbox consoles. And so for those multimedia all-in-one users who are purchasing a console for that reason, this is something that may detract you from that. Now, lastly, I'm going to go over some of the features that I like about the Xbox Series X, and I have a couple videos that go really deep into both what the Series X and S offer. But one of the things that I really do like, and I use more times than not, and it's improved since the inception of the series consoles, is quick resume. Basically being able to open a game, close a game, and get into another game, and then go back to that game that you were previously playing without skipping a beat. It just resumes the game again. It is a feature that is kind of underrated at this point, but it works pretty well. Now, there's some deficits when it comes to games that are live, like online games, but for the most part, it seems like Microsoft has fixed a lot of the quirks over the years that the Xbox Series-based consoles have been out, and basically ensured that your games pretty much seamlessly open, close, and work basically at any moment that you want to play them. And this might seem trivial, but it's something that it's at a point now, if I have to reload a game or I've restarted my Xbox due to an update or whatever that is, it seems like it almost throws me off when I have to go all the way from the beginning of a game to get back into it, because I'm so used to quick resume. It's such a small feature, but it adds a nice little piece of quality of life. Now, one of the other features that I want to talk about is the graphics themselves. And maybe I'm saying that these are smaller features, but this one for some people is going to be the most significant. So the Series X definitely has better graphics than the Series S. I had reviewed the Series X in previous years, and one of my main points of purchasing the console was for the fact that this was the best way at that time to play games on console when it came to the home console market. Now, that opinion has since changed, and that's because there isn't any Pro line model of the Series X console. There is only a Xbox Series X, which is essentially the Pro line version of your Series line console, versus the PlayStation 5 Pro, which there's no doubt in my mind, a lot of those games are going to most certainly look better than Xbox Series X games. And so if you are a person who's watching this video and you're trying to go between, hey, do I want to play, my games on the Series X, or do I want to play them on PS5 Pro? And the reason I'm doing that is for the best graphics possible. You can't go wrong with the PS5 Pro. And so that's something to consider. That's why earlier in the video I said if you want to play Xbox Game Pass games the best possible way on console, get the Series X. However, if you want to play games that are multi-platform more generally, they're most likely going to run and look better on the PS5 Pro. And so that is something to consider. However, as the graphics do go, I'm not in a rush to get a PS5 Pro, and even if Microsoft released a Series X Pro, which is probably not going to happen, but let's say they did release something like that, I still don't feel like we've had enough of a generational leap to really justify a Pro Series game console at this point. And I'm not in a rush to really buy something again at a premium to see if we're going to get a massive bump in graphics, or in many cases, that's not what we're going to get. We're going to get like a nice little hop, a little leap into a little bit better graphics. So that is something to consider, because when it comes to the graphics of this console, my opinion is they look great. They run 4K really well, and you're going to get an overall pretty positive gaming experience out of this device. However, if you're graphics obsessed but you don't want to go the PC gaming route and you want to stick with console and you got a bit of money, PS5 Pro is going to play multi-platform games the best. You're going to get the best possible experience in playing those games. So overall, my opinion is the biggest 3 things to consider with the Xbox Series X in 2025 is, do you need a disk drive or not? Are you going to be taking advantage of Game Pass? And are you okay with purchasing this console despite the fact that it's not going to be the most powerful gaming console at this current moment and there's other options on the market? Those are 3 big considerations that I would definitely consider before purchasing one of these consoles in 2025.